All right, guys. So we're going to look at questions 1 and 2 first, 1 through 4. Are there any specific questions on problems 1 through 4? Well, number 1 is just asking us to name the corresponding angles, which would be angle 8 and 1, angle 7 and angle 2, angle 4 and then angle 3 and angle 6, because they correspond. They're in the similar spot. Since 8 is to the left and above, the corresponding angle to it would be 1 because it's to the left and above. 7 is to the right and above, and the corresponding angle to it would be 2 because it's to the right and above. Angle 4 is to the left and below. The corresponding angle is 5 because it's to the left and below. 3 is to the right and below, and its corresponding angle is 6. Now the second one is our alternate exterior angles. Yes, sir? Outside the two lines and on opposite sides of the transversal. So 5 and angle 7 and then 8 and 6. 5 and 7, 8 and 6. They're both outside and on opposite sides of the transversal. Any other questions on 1 and 2?
What about number 4?
Okay. You ready to look at the next? So alternate interior angles are going to be on opposite sides of the transversal in between the two lines. 4 and 2, 3 and 1. Consecutive interior angles. So interior means they're on the inside, but consecutive means they're on the same side of the line. So we would have 4 and 1 and then 3 and 2. And that would be it for those first 4. Okay. Questions 5 through 10, classifying the angles. So on these here, we're either going to name them as alternate interior, alternate exterior, consecutive interior, or corresponding angles. They're going to be one of these 4 here. Is there a certain one that we want to look at? Okay. So number 8, 6 and 13. So we have angle 6 and angle 13. Well, they're outside the two lines. Alternate exterior angles, yes. So it's alternate exterior angles because they're on outside, makes them exterior, and on opposite sides of the transversal. So alternate exterior. Well, number 6, 8 and 9. Yeah. Yes. Consecutive interior angles. And that's all we're doing on this here. We're just naming how they relate to each other. Any other questions on 5 through 10? Or any other one of those that y'all want to look at? So 7 and 9, these two here. 7 is, well, they're not alternate exterior because they're not both outside. They're not interior because they're not both corresponding. Because since 7 is on the outside and 9 is on the inside, because we're mainly just looking at this here, they're in the same spot above the line and to the left, they're corresponding. Because they're in the same place. They'd be corresponding. 7, 1 and 14. Because they're between the two lines and on opposite sides of the transversal? Alternate interior. 8 and 3. Those are between the two lines and on opposite sides, so it would be alternate interior also. Any other questions on these here? Think of each segment in the diagram as part of a line. All angles are right angles. Which lines or planes contain the point H and appear to fit the description? So, we can look at problem number 12, line parallel to DC, HG. Yes. Because if it's parallel, it needs to be contained within the same plane. So, contained in the same plane would either be here or here, but since everything needs to contain point H, we would use HG. Let's look at 13. Skew. DH. Skew means that the lines are not, they will not intersect and not in the same plane. They're not contained within the same plane. Because AD is contained in the same plane as BC. Now, there's actually another one. We could say HG, because HG is not contained within the plane of BC. And do those two lines intersect? No. So they would also be skew. Contained within the same plane and does not intersect the line. How about parallel to AEF? Plane H what? DHE. G, yes, DHG would work. DHG or HGC, any way to name that plane there. I would prefer it, just do not draw a line above it because it's not a line. We would just say those three letters are plane HGC, plane DHG.
I guess I'm almost wanting to draw it. So it's fine if you don't like it.
I'd prefer it. Yes, C would also be part of it. Yes, line skew to AB. So AB is right here. HG, DH would also work. DH, HG would work. Unfortunately, EF will not work. It is, but it also it has to contain point H. HE would work, yes. HG I will accept it for this here, but I mean, depending on if we just consider the surfaces as the only planes, because we could probably technically make a plane going diagonally through the cube, but I would take it. That's fine. Any other questions on this here? So let's look at 16 or 17. Line perpendicular, so it needs to intersect it at a right angle. Well, all the angles in here are
Right angles.
So let's look at 16A, E, EH or HE, either one would be the one that intersects it. Perpendicular means they intersect at a right angle. Now, it's told to us all angles are right angles for this here. So any two lines that intersect would be perpendicular. Any other questions on this here?
Yeah, what plane 18?
Plane parallel to ABC. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's look at 19 through 24. Are there questions on 19 or 20? Naming a pair of parallel lines.
Yes.
So what would be a pair of parallel lines? JZ is going to be parallel to
I didn't know they could
KP. QK would also work. Any way to name these two lines. And the way that we know that these two lines are parallel is because of the arrow markers. Because of these two sets of arrow markers, we can say that these two lines are parallel to each other.
Oh, that's a parallel sign.
Mm-hmm. So any way that we name those or the other two, because there is another set. Yep. Because these two lines here are also parallel to each other. Now the number of little arrow markers that we have will match to each other. Since these two have one, they are parallel. Since the others have two, they are parallel to each other. And the perpendicular lines, be perpendicular to BZ. Now we could name those two lines A, B, or BZ in multiple ways because all we need is 2 points to name the line. And each one of them does have 3, so there's multiple ways we could have named them. Guys, questions on this here? Perpendicular means they intersect at a right angle. And at point B, we do have the right angle marker, so we do know that they intersect at a right angle. Any other questions on this here? Questions on 25 through 29. Questions on one of those there. Which one? 25. So, looking at 25, we're told that we have two parallel lines that are intersected by a transversal. So the angles in this here are either going to be congruent or supplementary. So we're wanting to find the measures of angles 1 and 2. But 130 and angle 1 are alternate exterior angles. Yes? Angle 2 would be 50, yes. Because we know that 130 and angle 2 make a straight line, so they add together to be. So I can say 180 minus 130, which is, so the measure of angle 2 is 50, and the measure of angle 1 is 130. Now, if you wanted to, we could have gone through and actually plugged them all in, the ones that are congruent, because 130 and this angle here are going to be congruent because of vertical angles. These two in the middle are alternate interior angles, which are congruent, so they would both be 130, and we get the other one. We get the measure of angle 1. And then we could go about finding the others as 50, because again, they add together to be 180, and we get them all here. If it does help to actually go and fill all of those in and then name the two angles that it wants, go on and do that. Yes, sir. Yes. So we know that this one angle is 98 degrees. Well, alternate exterior angles are congruent. So this 98 and this one over here would also be Now, vertical angles, 98 and where one's at would also be 98. And this one here would also be 98 degrees. Yes. So the measure of angle 1 would be 98. Now the others would all be the same, but to find it, I'm going to have to take 180 and subtract 98 from it, which would be 82. So the rest of these angles would be 82 degrees, which means the measure of angle 2 is 82, because that's where the angle located was one of the 82s. That'd be fine. Now, if we look at 26, and I went on and filled it in, well, this would be 70 degrees because of vertical angles. One would be 70 because of alternate interior angles. Yes. And if we wanted the rest of them, it would end up being 110. And that's it. Questions on this here?
So what does it mean when they have those arrows on the line?
Parallel. All right, guys, let's look at problems 30 through 32. We are told that the two lines are parallel, cut by a transversal. We want to find the value of x. Is there one of these in particular that y'all want to look at? 32?
Yes.
So when we look at these two angles that are given, are they corresponding angles?
No.
Well, no. Are they alternate interior or alternate exterior? Well, they are both exterior. Are they on opposite sides of the transversal? They would be considered consecutive exterior. They're on the same side of the line, but they're not alternate. So if they're not alternate exterior, they're not alternate interior, and they're not corresponding, it means they are not congruent. If the two angles are not congruent, they have to do what? Add together to be 180. Because whenever we have two lines cut by a transversal, the angles are either going to be congruent or add together to be 180. That's the only two ways that they will work out. So to solve for the value of x, the first thing we need to do is combine like terms, because we do have like terms on the same side. 3x plus x is 4x. 20 minus 60 is, would be negative 40. We would add 40 to both sides. On the left-hand side, we would have 4x. And 180 plus 40 would be 220. Question? Yes? Yes. So the value of x would be 55. Yes. Okay.
Good. Everyone's good.
Let's look at 30. So the two angles that they're given, 6x minus 30 and 2x plus 90, are they corresponding angles?
Yes.
Well, they're not corresponding. They're not on.
Alternate exterior.
They are alternate exterior. They're both outside and on opposite sides of the transversal. So if they're alternate exterior, it means that they are congruent. They're the same. So 6x minus 30 is equal to, they're going to be equal because they are congruent. Because alternate exterior angles are congruent. Because if they are corresponding alternate exterior or alternate interior, it means they're congruent and we can set them equal to each other. Consecutive is supplementary. Now we need to get x's on the same side. So we're going to subtract 2x from both sides. Since the x's and our constant terms, our number without x, are on opposite sides of the equal sign, we have to add or subtract to get them on the same side. So we would subtract 2x from both sides, because 2x minus 2x would be 0. 6 minus 2x would be minus 30 is equal to 90. Now to get x by itself, we would add 30 to both sides. Is negative 30 plus 30 is 0, leaving us with just 4x is equal to. Yes. Any other questions on this here? Are we good with 30 through 32? Questions on 33 through 35? Actually, 33 through 35 is the exact same thing as what we just did. The only thing is that they're rephrasing it to find the value of x to make A parallel to B. Well, if they're parallel, then we would either have them be congruent or supplementary, kind of like what we did on the last one. This one here, we're just saying what's the value of x that wouldn't make them parallel. But it's the exact same thing. Is there one of these that you all want to look at? 33? So 2x minus 10 and 140, are they corresponding angles? Yes. So if the lines were parallel, these two angles would be congruent. They'd be the same. 2x. Yes. Now we just need to solve for the value of x. So the first thing we would do to get x by itself is to add 10 to both sides. So we get that 2x is equal to try again. It would be 75. Guys, be nice. Any other questions on this here, guys?
So
This here will behave just like the ones we just did. It's just saying what value of x, what does the value of x need to be for the lines to be parallel? On the last ones, we said the lines are parallel. What is going to be the value of x? So it's doing the same thing. It's just a different phrasing of the problem. Are we good with 33 through 35? Questions on 36 through 39? So they gave us those two angles. They said they were congruent, yes? Are those two angles corresponding alternate interior, alternate exterior angles? So can we say that these two lines are parallel? Yes. Because of the alternate exterior angle converse. Because according to the alternate exterior angle converse, if two lines cut by a transversal and their alternate, interior angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. Now the only one that won't work on these here is consecutive interior angles, like 38, because those two angles are consecutive interior angles, yes? Consecutive interior angles add together to be 180, because if they add together to be 180, then they are parallel. Then the two lines would be parallel. So if these two angles were both 90, then they would be parallel, yes? Does it say that the angles are 90? It just says that they're congruent, right? So they could both be 90, or they could both be 30, or 20, or any angle. They're the same. So are we able to say that they are parallel? No. So really on this section here, the only ones that work are alternate exterior, alternate interior, or corresponding. Because if it's one of those three, then we can say the lines are parallel. And consecutive interior angles doesn't help us. Or if they're on the same line. Because if it just told us that these two angles were congruent and didn't tell us anything about that one, well, that doesn't tell us anything. It only tells us about the one line. Any other questions on this here? Questions on 40 through 42. Is there one of them that we want to at least look at? Are we good? 40? So if we're finding the equation of a line that's parallel to the given line, the slopes will be the exact same. So the slope of this line would be -7/8 because it's going to match up with that one. Do we need anything else from this equation here? No. Yes. And we'll use this equation and plug in the point and the slope. So we use our y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, and it would probably be good to have that in your note sheets, the equation. And at this point here, we just need to get y by itself. So the first thing we can do is multiply through by the -7/8, which would plus 7, because -7/8 times -8 would give us +7. The next thing we can do is add 12. Since it's negative, we would add, which would tell me that y is equal to -7/8 plus. And that right there would be the equation of the line. Any other questions on this here? All right. Feel good with that there? Yes? Change the sign and flip it. Change the sign and flip it. You're good? Let's go on and just look at one with perpendicular. Because if two lines are perpendicular, we have to change and flip the slopes. Because since the original slope was -1/2, we have to change the sign. So we change it from negative to. Now when we flip 1/2, it becomes 2/1 or just 2. So if 1 is on top of the fraction, when we flip it, it's just what the whole number of whatever was on bottom. Now again, we can use the same formula, y minus y1 equals m. So y minus 15 is equal to 2 times x minus 9. Very good. So we plug in the 9 and 15. 15 for y, 9 for x, and our slope is 2. Now we just need to get y by itself. And the first thing we can do is distribute the 2. Minus 18, because 2 times x would be 2x. 2 times 9 would be 18. Then we would add 15 to both sides.
Can I have your attention, please? It's time for the members of the academic team on grades 9 through 12 to please meet at the back doors. Thank you.
We have 2 things left, and this is one of them. We want to determine if the 2 lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. y2 minus y1 over. So it might be good to have the slope formula in your review sheet to reference back to tomorrow. Huh? Yeah. Bless you.
Well, I think my brain is more
Guys. 46, 47, or 48, is there one of these in particular you all want to look at?
47. Yeah.
Let's look at 47. So for this here, we're going to use the slope formula. So for line 1, m is equal to. So our 2 y values, because we have x, y, so we have -5 minus 0. Now because we picked the -5 first, 3 will go first in the denominator, and then -1. Now -5 minus 0 is going to be -5. Now 3 minus -1, well the negative make a. Now -5 divided by 4, that won't simplify. We can leave it as is. Now we need to do the same thing for line 2. So our y values are 2 and -5. So we can say -5 minus 2. And our x values would be -1 minus. Well, -5 minus 2 is -7. -1 minus -1. Well, the negative would make a positive. So this slope is. So are these 2 slopes the same? Are they opposite reciprocals? Could we change the sign and flip it to go from here to here?
No.
So these are neither. Because if the slopes are the same, then they are parallel. If we can change the sign and flip one and get to the other, then they're perpendicular. Any questions on this here? And that brings us to the last one here, 49 and 50. Is there one of these 2 that y'all would want to look at?
49.
Thank you. 49. What we're wanting to do is we need to find the slope of all 4 lines. And once we find the slope of all 4 lines, then we can determine which ones are parallel and which ones are perpendicular. So if we start off with line A, slope. So line A is right here. So we do have the point -6, 6 and 4, 0. So we can say 6 minus 4 over -6 minus 0. So we're plugging in the x and y values. Now on top, 6 minus 4 is, -6 minus 0 is, well, this would reduce down to -1/3. So the slope of that line is -1/3. Now we can move on to line B. Line B has 2 points, one at 4, 0, -2, 2, and -3, 5. We just need to pick 2 of them. It doesn't matter which. So I can say 4 minus negative 2. The x value with 4 is 0 minus negative 2. Because if we depict any two of those three, we will get the same value. As the negative and negative would make a positive, 4 plus 2 is 6. 0 minus negative 2, or 0 plus 2, 3 over 1, which is 3. Now we can move on to line C. Line C is right here. Now this point here is 6, 2. We could use the graph to be able to find it. It didn't directly tell us. We can use it and negative, or 4, negative 4. So we can say 2 minus negative 4 over 6 minus 4. Because a negative and negative would make a positive, so 6. They would be. So let's go on and find the slope of line D, and then we can name all the ones that are parallel and perpendicular. So line D, we do have the point 4, negative 4, and negative 3, negative 5. So we can say negative 5 minus negative 4. And then on bottom, it would be negative 3 minus 4. Here, the negative and negative would make a. Negative 5 plus 4 is negative 1. So we have negative 7 on bottom. Well, negative 1 divided by negative 7 is the same as positive 1 over 7. Now, looking at all of these here, let's see here. Well, looking at these slopes, we can say for certain that B is parallel to. So, is there any that are perpendicular? AB. A is perpendicular to B, and A is perpendicular to C. Since B and C are parallel, and A is perpendicular to one of them, it's going to have to be perpendicular to the other. And that's it. This here would be the answer. Any other questions on any of this here? All right, guys, so your test is tomorrow. And also, all of your assignments are due at the end of the day tomorrow. So 3-1, 3-2, 3-3, and 3-5.
I think I have all.
We didn't. Yep, we did not do 3-4.